As you know, in the history of the Bible as well as in the history of the church has faced a lot of challenges when its shepherds have lost their way. Places like Ezekiel 34, where the shepherds of Israel cared more about themselves than they did about their sheep. So we have God speaking through Ezekiel the prophet that he himself will come and shepherd his people. He himself will come and feed his people, feed his flock. He himself will come and ultimately lay down his life for the sheep. And we know that it comes to fruition ultimately in the life of Jesus, the greatest shepherd of all of his sheep. And then you see this connection between, let's say, Ezekiel 34 to John chapter 10. And Jesus himself being called the great shepherd of the sheep. And so I think one of the first things I would say to our Korean pastors, who, not just Korean pastors, but a lot of pastors, even in America, who have kind of lost their way, is to remember the paradigm of good shepherding through the paradigm of Jesus, our good shepherd. And let me just say two things about that. We can learn from Jesus, the true shepherd, in this way. Jesus loved his sheep intimately. Jesus, and secondly, knew his calling intimately. What I mean by that is this. Jesus knew his sheep so well. Stories abound in the Middle East where shepherds really know their sheep. For example, shepherd in complete darkness in the middle of the night can actually just feel the shape of the sheep and then the mother sheep, and then feel the sheep, a baby sheep, and match the mother to lamb in complete darkness just by feeling their heads and their bodies. That's how intimately shepherds knew their sheep. Now, do we as shepherds, in the same pattern of Jesus, know our sheep as well? Their desires, their wants, their challenges, their conflicts, their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, their trials, their tribulations. Do we really know our sheep as well as these sheep? Do we know our sheep as well as Jesus knew his sheep? So that's a challenge, isn't it? But that's essentially where God is calling us to be, like Jesus in shepherding our sheep. Secondly, you know that Jesus knew his calling intimately. And this is important. Why? Because when you know your calling intimately, it gives you greater conviction when it gets hard. Think about this. Many great leaders in the Bible were shepherds. Think of Moses. His first calling was as a shepherd. David was a shepherd. Jesus was a shepherd. And all three of them had shepherd-like wilderness experiences. Moses was taken out to the wilderness for 40 years where he was tested and tried. David had a wilderness experience. Jesus had 40 days of a wilderness experience. Why? Because when you're in a wilderness experience, when everything is stripped away as a shepherd, that's when you learn, I have to rely upon God and God's word alone to survive. Because in this wilderness experience, I will die without the Lord. And that's our calling. In this context of wilderness, we have to remember that we've been called by God. We would be given everything that we need to shepherd his flock. So keep trusting, keep relying, and keep loving your flock. Because there will be trials, there will be temptations, there will be even more wilderness experiences. And yet we have God's trustworthy promise that he will never leave us nor forsake us. So, like Jesus, we as shepherds need to remember, we need to love our sheep intimately, but also remember our calling intimately so that we don't give up when it gets hard.